sure you probably have a lot more of those if you go search the internet. Okay. If you have no other questions about creativity, we're going to move on to the main topic of today, which is the idea of language. And so the 4 questions we're going to answer in language is, what is language? How does it work? How do we acquire language? And finally, and most importantly, how does language affect the way we think? And that's why language is kind of loped into cognition, is because thinking is so intertwined with language. When you think of things, how do you think of them? Is it in words, pictures, sounds, I don't know, shapes, concepts, theories? And so I want to propose to you that language and thinking is so intrinsically interlinked that it's difficult to have one without the other. So let's start with the first question, which is, what is language? Why do we need language? And I'm going to ask you to imagine something. Imagine there's an alien race out there that is able to transmit their thoughts through air to each other without moving their hands, complex ideas, complex thoughts, philosophy, psychology. It would be very useful, it would be great. And of course, that's exactly what language and what humans have, is that they're able to transport their thoughts, their speeches, their attitudes and feelings and words through the air, from mouth to ear, right, through sound waves, and we can communicate through that and exchange ideas. How brilliant is that? And so when you think about what the purpose of language is, it seems kind of silly because that's what we do every day. Most of the time is that we're trying to communicate our thoughts and ideas to each other. And that is what language is. So let's talk about what are the basic elements of language. So in every language, there's about 3,000 in the world living today. Most of them are not spoken by many people. What's the major languages? English, Chinese, Spanish, right? But when linguists study language, they found that there's very similar things that I'm going to talk about now. The first one is the building block of language, which is phonemes. They're basic sounds, so to speak. So for example, look at the word bat. That actually has 3 phonemes. These are the 3 sounds that make up the word bat. There's the b, the a, and the t, right? Bat, that comes together. So these are the building blocks of every language that puts the words together. And just to show you how colorful and how important phonemes are, just using the b and the t sound, we could have actually all different kinds of word. Bat, bet with an e, bit with an i, bait with an au, AI, but, beat, right? Another word could be ite, bite. We have bait. So even just of different phonemes put together, we have all these different kind of words, very colorful words. That brings us to the next part, which are morphemes. The idea is that these are the basic units of words. Once we put these sounds together, what are the smallest units that make the most sense? And there's only like 2 phonemes in English that are also morphemes, which is a and I. But basically, bat is a morpheme, fish, ball. These are all basic units of words that makes the most sense when put together. Okay, right? And the next part is semantics, the idea that these morphemes have to make sense. I say the word bat to you. Semantically, what does it mean? Is it the baseball bat? Is it a flying bat? Like the bat you see that like vampires and Draculas? So that's the other ideas that you have the meaning of these words, the semantics, right? All these words have to have meaning, otherwise you just have nonsensical sounds. The last part is you have syntax and grammar. That is the idea that how do you organize these words into meaningful ideas, right? So for example, I have a bat, that's how you arrange those 4 words. I have a bat. These are ways that you organize a sentence into something logical and understandable. If you put something like I bat have, then it becomes ungrammatical. Again, grammar is just the rules and logic of how to put these words together. It's related to syntax. So different languages have different ways of putting words together. For example, in English, the adjective comes before the noun. We have a red apple, white house. In Spanish, however, it's the other way around. You have the noun and then the adjective. For example, red apple is actually manzana roja, because you have to actually make the gender of the words fit. White house becomes casa blanca, right? The casa is house, blanca is white. So the adjective follows that. For example, Spanish also has this other syntax, which is the gender of things have to match. So if a noun like is male, libro, for example, book is male, libro, You have to make sure the adjective that describes it is also in the masculine form, right? Same thing if it's for female. What else? Maybe in your language, how those words come together. Another interesting syntax grammar thing I like is in English, in Spanish, most languages, it's the subject, verb, object. I hit the ball. So there's a couple languages like in Japanese that's different, the subject, object, verb. For example, in this case you have to say, the ball, hit. So these are just different ideas of how different syntax and grammars are. That some even word sentence order are different in different languages. Maybe you've learned different language before and have to learn these different syntax. Exciting, I love to learn. Okay, the next part is how is it that children start to learn how to acquire these languages? And what they found is that people looking at children is that there's a kind of a universal pattern. There's a set stage time period in which children learn languages, right? And let's go through that first of all. So, there's kind of two stages that children have to go through. They have to receive the language, they have to listen and hear it, receptive language, and there's the productive language, which is that they produce the sounds now to generate on their own. Now, up to month 4, let's see if I can number this correctly. Up to month 4, at 4 months, the baby starts babbling. This is what we call the babbling stage. But even before that, the baby is able to recognize kind of mouth shapes and sounds that come with it. So even at 2 to 3 months, it could stare at your mouth and it could understand different sounds like E, which is you have to stretch out your lips here, E, or Ah, which is to open your mouth there. So they begin to look at the mouth formation. At the babbling stage, you try to replicate these sounds now, except it's kind of nonsensical sounds. At the babbling stage, you hear words like da-da, gaga, ogoi. If you have access to a baby, you could probably hear this, is that it's very cute, they're making nonsensical sounds, and they're basically trying to test out their vocal cords, testing out their mouth shapes and their tongue shapes in order to make sounds, right? And that's at 4 months. At 10 months, they have what we call the one word stage. Sorry, this is 12 months. At 12 months, I have the one-word stage, which they're able to replicate it. Again, sorry, at the 10 month, they're able to replicate sounds that resemble sounds. They resemble sounds that are in that native tongue at 10 months. At 12 months, at the 1 year stage, they're able to use single words. For example, cat, bat, ball. It's really cute. So when they say like cat, it actually means, look, mother, there's a cat over there. I would like to touch it. Except they don't use those complete words, and so they only have one. That's what we call the one-word stage. When does the two-word stage comes in? That's at the 24 months, so it takes them another year to put 2 words together. For example, like big cat, or cat big, ball mine. And this is what we also call the telegraphic speech phase, because they use single words, and just like a telegraph, it's very short, truncated, and is used to express longer ideas, right? At 24 months plus on, they don't have a 3-word stage, they don't have a 4-word stage. It's like kids suddenly become able to use full sentences. However, oftentimes in that stage, they haven't really grasped the idea of grammar yet. So they understand grammatic syntax rules. For example, if you want to change something to the past tense, you have to add an ed at the end, right? So like chase becomes chased. However, there's a lot of kind of in English, irregular verbs, and you see children kind of messing it up. For example, they'll say like, oh, I eated the apple, or I holded the rabbit, right? So they kind of understand these basic rules, which is you add an ed to it, but they haven't figured out the irregular verbs yet, the intricacies of English. The things that make English so difficult to learn.